Hi, and we're live. Great to have you watching with us. If you're listening back on the podcast, it is great to have you here as well. So that should be a really interesting chat. I have one of my oldest friends, Dave Hughes, with me today, who he's going to tell you a little bit about himself and also some of his thoughts of what's going on at the moment, and should be able to offer a really nice, unique perspective. So, Dave, how are you doing first of all with all this chaos?
Yeah, it's been a strange few weeks, hasn't it? I don't really know where to begin. I think from a music angle, it's been absolutely ridiculous. And I don't really know where to start in terms of gigs. Um, Briefly, I'm a music educator. I am a Perry teacher in two private schools and two state schools. One through a music service, one employed directly by the school. And then the two private schools, one of those is self-employed, and the other one I'm in at school. So all the teaching went out the window a couple of weeks ago, and we were told not very much at that point. It was a case of right, you know, we're going to try and get something sorted out. My self-employed teaching, like a lot of you out there, I panicked a lot and thought, I've billed a load of kids in advance for lessons that they haven't got. We've got 2 weeks of term left to go. Am I going to have to give refunds, all that kind of thing? As it turned out, I turned to Zoom and used it, and it was brilliant. Online worked really well, and we're good to go, hopefully, for after Easter. But otherwise, it's left me feeling a bit strained with lockdown. So, how about you? How you found it?
Yeah, to be honest, like slightly similar, and just this sort of odd situation of it being a sort of slightly trapped in limbo, not quite sure what to do and where to be, all these different
Yeah,
various bits, which are, yeah, it's slightly unusual. I haven't quite worked out where I'm feeling or sort of, yeah, how each day goes. Structure has just like disappeared out the
yeah,
window, which I'm finding quite hard. Um,
yeah, of course.
yeah, so amongst other things, as you mentioned, you're partly a peripatetic teacher. Has all this going to be online been led by the music club that you work for, or is it still sort of slightly onto your own self-onus?
The self-employed side, where I'm teaching in a private school and I'm teaching myself on behalf of the school. Bit of a strange situation. Sure, there's a few people out there who are similar. That side has all gone very well because I've had contact directly with the parents. So we've been able to basically say, dear parents, you're in the same situation as us. Obviously, your kid's kicking around. Presumably, you'd like them to carry on having music lessons. I owe you a couple of lessons anyway. So that's all been absolutely fine. It's been arranged, and I've timetabled it as as it would be in school, essentially. Um, with music services, it's a little bit more difficult. That hurdle still to be overcome, as far as I'm aware, and I think we're going to try and go for it after Easter. Trying to teach in groups. I'm not sure. For those of you who are listening later on, I'm not sure how you did it, and those of you who are listening and watching live, any ideas will be greatly received. Teaching in small groups for 20-minute lessons on Zoom is going to be difficult, I think, it's fair to say. Give it a go. It's it's going to be a challenge, I think. I think this is completely new ground for everyone, especially in like music and music education. Obviously, one thing that's happening as well is a lot of pros who hadn't previously taught very much are coming into the teaching spectrum. You've seen it all over Instagram, especially, get in touch or, lessons, that kind of thing as well. So yeah, everyone's sort of really battling to get through it, I think. But it's going quite well. I think in terms of if you actually put your mind to it and you do say you're open with parents of kids when you're teaching, I think it can be a really good way forward. Yeah. Mm.
Yeah, and from what I've heard from talking to various musicians and teachers of all different instruments and levels and abilities, um, parents and students seem really keen to carry on with things, which is, I think, really reassuring for everyone
Mm.
involved that it's not just going to dry up because everyone's assuming that video teaching isn't as good. I spoke to Kimberly Wong last week, and she was saying
Yeah.
it's been a really easy transition for her, and her parents have all bought into the teaching idea as well as the students. So there's some good signs there. One thing that you're involved in being the hub is also being the Musicians Union rep as well. So there must be quite a bit of
Mm.
responsibility for your members that you represent as well. What sort of thoughts and feelings are coming through from them?
Um, To be honest with you, the MU, to do a brief outline of what that role is, because it's not one of the specific MU health and safety reps or orchestra reps. It's a different, newer role. So it's about 3 or 4 years old. It's the hub rep. So a few years ago, the Arts Council decided that money was going to be devolved to music services and different areas through music hubs that were set up. And usually with the music service as the lead organisation of that hub, and it was designed so that every child in the county had access to music, and it was the hub that was supposed to provide that as a signposting organisation. And basically what the MU did was to get more of a foot on the ground as to what was going on in the hubs, because every model is so different across the country. They said, we're going to set up a series of hub reps. So basically our job is a kind of reporting job, being a ears on the ground for the union, and also liaising between members and the union, in terms of things that are going on and issues in the workforce. I think in this area, I think everyone's pretty, everyone, as I say, at the moment, it's all completely uncharted territory. I'm hearing from colleagues in the NU across the country that it's a completely different picture in every county you go to. Every music service operates in a different way. Every hub operates in different ways. Some hubs don't even have music services involved in them. So I think the thing is fair to say is that here in North Yorkshire, as this new way of teaching hasn't yet come online, it's difficult to say how it's going to go. I agree with everyone in teaching that it's really important to try and keep some semblance of normality going to the kids. And whether that means a lesson, half an hour individual lesson, if you've been having private lessons before, or whether that's trying to get 20 minutes with 3 other people, get them all together at the same time online. I'm a drum teacher and a brass teacher. When we drum wise, a lot of kids in county music service lessons don't have drum kits, so trying to get them to come in with some pots and pans, we'll do what you can. You just got to do what you can, really. But in terms of MU, the MU have been incredible, and I'm not. Other unions are available. The MU have been brilliant, and there's been pretty much a daily coronavirus update email going out, which is actually open to every musician. They've encouraged you to share it, just to say, look, this is what's going on in the music industry across a broad church, because I think it's fair to say that in the past, probably both the big music unions in the country were probably accused of not being particularly favourable, not favourable, but not being as accessible to music educators as performers. So people who make them a predominant amount of their income out of music education were not necessarily feeling as included, and I think they've really done a lot to try and balance that out now, both of those unions. So we'll wait and see. But it's been an interesting time for unions. I think they've faced a lot of pressure. Obviously, most union staff are also working from home as well. And obviously, with these, the ISM and the NU are both very sort of hands-on unions, dealing with a lot of people who work for themselves rather than necessarily work for companies. It's they must have a lot on their plate, I think.
Yeah, very much so. So
off to them.
Exactly, massively, and it's I'll come back to unions later on. But one thing, I'm glad you've got beer because I've got wine as well. But hiding it out of shot. Exactly. It's worth doing. It's Easter. Why not? It's not like we've got an early start tomorrow anyway. But
no.
Yeah. At risk of saying potentially our age and how long we've known each other. Dave and I originally met in our county youth orchestras, so we only used to meet once a year for a week residential course. And not saying how long ago it was, but in my first year, I remember taking a notebook where other members of the orchestra would write sort of little messages, and you'd read them for the next year, and you wouldn't be able to keep in touch. As I'm sure you remember something vaguely similar. Can you even begin to imagine how it would have been back then trying to do this sort of thing without the technology, or MSN Messenger the following year when that came in, and all that absolute chaos?
Crazy. I mean, I think it's one of those situations where technology has become an absolute godsend for everyone in the whole country, probably across the whole world, developed world. And doing what we're doing now is brilliant. Talking to relatives is brilliant. Delivering education, webinars, live streams. it has been absolutely brilliant. And if you go onto Instagram most evenings now, there is an Instagram live gig or concert or live stream going on most nights.
Yeah.
I think there's more creativity going on now than I think there probably was pre March the 20th, whenever 23rd, whenever it was, went into lockdown. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. And as you absolutely rightly as you say, thinking back in those days, you'd come away from the county youth orchestra courses having, seen your friend or your section buddy for the first time that year, and you'd have MSN Messenger, you'd have Bebo, probably at one point, MySpace, going back that.
Oh, it's all about being in the top friends on MySpace as well.
Yeah, bring back MySpace. Life was so much simpler.
What was the name of the guy who was in charge? Was it Tom? Tom from MySpace? Who was
Tom, yeah. Everyone was friends with Tom, weren't they, at the top? Yeah. I wonder what he's doing now.
Exactly.
He's probably invested in some tech company.
You can imagine. But no, it's and even sort of, I think it was 2002, my first year, or maybe 2001. And then sort of even thinking back to then, sort of a few years in, someone would come in with a camera phone that could take photos, but there'd be like 3 pixels and you couldn't see anything on them. It's amazing to think sort of, even with the bits of internet that, like in the next few years, it wouldn't have been able to do this. I think we've been, as small victories, it's kind of a lucky situation that we've had this right now. I can't even begin to imagine how it would have affected us, 10 years ago?
I think so, absolutely. And I think, it's funny you bring orchestras into it. I mean, we were both in a county youth orchestra that was, it was run. It was socially, I think, it was absolutely brilliant socially. That was the highlight of it. And, a lot of us made, like I think a lot of people watching, listening to this will go back to their youth music making days. And I guess it's the same in sport as well, but I think music's a bit more, it's a little bit more different because it's across the ages, it's across, sort of boys and girls, and, it's a very much, much more open field, and socially it's an absolutely brilliant experience. Obviously it's a really good experience from a music making point of view as well, because you're exposed to repertoire that you probably wouldn't have been exposed to before. Some probably more challenging than it should have been. In some situations it's pretty skin of the teeth stuff, but those experiences are the ones that you remember for the rest of your life. I think some of them, and even sort of friends who didn't go into music, still now have really sort of fond memories of their times in youth music organisations. And it's great that they're carrying on doing things. I've seen so much going on in social media with kind of National Youth Orchestra and conservatoires and different organisations around the country, live streaming and doing different silly videos and putting multi-track recordings together. It's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. And you're right, wouldn't have been possible. 10 years ago, there's not a chance it would have happened. So we're lucky in that respect that we can continue to operate in and try and carry on semblance of normality.
No, and as you say, it's a semblance of normality. It's not like it definitely feels strange, but as you say with the young people, it's trying to make sure the lessons continue and it's maintaining that contact. But it's
difficult. I mean, it's not going to be the same. There's been I've noticed a few people talking about the money, and we're going to talk about the N word now because it's an awkward word, and when as professionals, as musicians, as educators, as entrepreneurs, money is going to when we have to talk about money, it's not always easy to talk about. When you're talking to clients, you're talking to parents, you're talking to kids, you're talking to schools. Money is a difficult one to talk about, and I have to think long and hard about this, about the quality of lessons we can give online realistically. I think you can put as much in a different way as you can to a school lesson. Now, the joy of doing it online is that I'm going to say Joe isn't in DT and completely forgets about his music lesson. So, so you can email Joe's mum, and Joe's mum's downstairs, and Joe's mum can send him off to the music room or whatever and have his lesson.
Yeah.
That's one of the good things about being able to do this. You're not having to then rush around schools, which I know colleagues of you out there who are sort of Perrys or who go between school to school will know a lot about that, dashing between schools, signing in, having to get into music departments, and then teaching for sort of 7 minutes once they've got their instrument out. got the valves oiled and all that kind of thing. It's difficult. So for me, as a kind of a, we're saying, I would say the quality of lessons actually can be really good. You've just got to be open to adapt. And I think I'm really, really pleased that so many people are open to adapting, are open to saying, yeah, I want to give it a go, and I'm going to try and get online. I'm going to download Zoom. I'm going to give it a good go, because it is possible. It really is, and it's possible to do a good thing. But as I go back to that money thing, it's how you justify to parents why you're still charging the full rate. And I know on your Facebook group, there's been various discussions about this as well.
Yes,
it's been really interesting to see how colleagues are approaching this from across the country. And I think the overall kind of consensus seems to be, carry on charging the rate you were charging before and justify it accordingly, as to why you're charging this amount. For example, saying, the amount of money, amount of time, that you go in, you get into, you're preparing each lesson a lot longer, resources that you may send across via email, writing up things via email afterwards as well. You do spend more time on the lesson. So actually, I think you are justified in continuing to charge the same. So that's the only, so far, that's been the thing for me that has been difficult. And I've not had any issues so far, thankfully. I've had no one saying to me, can we have cheaper lessons, that kind of thing. So that's a good thing, I think.
Definitely.
But we'll see how it goes. 2 weeks off Easterish, and then we'll
it's hard to know. No, and I think you make a very good point that it's still paying you for your prep time, the resources you're having to do for doing this. Most music teachers have had to outlay some sort of cost of technology as well. But my sort of inherent philosophical point about it is that, in essence, you're getting paid for your skills to deliver a service. And teaching music well online is a massive skill, and it's different in terms of how you approach it and how you do it in the classroom and things. So in essence, that skill level doesn't change, and it still has the same value. It's just a different way of doing it, in effect. But it's interesting to say about people approaching it with parents and things. And what I seem to have noticed from various support groups that have been set up is that the teachers who've just been very blunt from the beginning and saying, we're going online, the costs are the same, let's keep going, are the ones who have had zero complaints. It seems to be the teachers who are very conscious that they don't want to be ripping off students and being cautious in how they talk to parents and potentially offering discounts in the first place. They seem to be facing the potential issues of costs being cut, which I think is interesting.
It's a tough one. I mean, there are going to be parents who are going to say thanks but no thanks. There's a really difficult line to tread here. We're not the only ones who are losing income. I should also say as well that, as well as teaching, I also play in a function band, and obviously it's getting into a busy time now, and we've had a heck of a lot of gigs cancelled. Like a lot of you out there, playing wise, gigs go and they're gone, and you get the email saying, really sorry, but we either need to cancel or we need to postpone. And great, postpone to next year. That's fantastic, but it doesn't stop the fact you're worrying about this year. That's difficult. I think there are obviously parents. A lot of parents have lost income, and so keeping up the music lessons, it's not really horse riding, is it? But keeping up music lessons, keeping up French lessons, maybe tutoring online. It's going to take its toll financially. There is going to be something's going to have to give, and I think if you can justify to parents why online is okay and why you're continuing to do it online, I think then that's okay. Then you can at least say, look, I've told them, I've been as open as I can. I've told them the pros of doing it online. And if they then turn around to you and say, thanks but no thanks, then you've done what you can.
Yeah.
Really.
Just as a mini to address something you just said, you mentioned you were in a function band. I think you did yourself a slight disservice with that. It's an exceptionally successful function band, on one that travels genuinely the length and breadth of the country on a day-to-day basis over weekends, and which I'm always amazed at. Sort of a text message from, I'm at so-and-so service station. I think, what on earth are you doing? Like 200, 300, 400 miles away. So that huge element of travel side must have affected you even before the gatherings and things. So yeah, it's I think my sister was getting married in May, which has now been postponed for the next year for obvious reasons. And yeah, I imagine you've been in a similar situation where all these things are being postponed, which is great. They'll be coming back at some point, but the interim
Yeah,
must be quite a daunting time because you're not covered by contracts in the same way or a salary in the same way for that sort of thing.
it's tough. I mean, the wedding industry is a really cutthroat industry, and it's a bit of a race to the bottom. Well, a lot of people think it is, in terms of certainly of the entertainment side of things. It's very common to find bands, DJs, string quartets undercutting each other, and it's not on. It's really poor. I mean, we've heard of people. Sort of bands saying to couples, have we've got a band already for your wedding? Yeah. Oh, who is it? Oh, it's those guys. How much you pet charging? This amount. Oh, we'll come and do it for this amount. Now we do have a contract. We use the MU Live contract, which is the standard contract, which is great. You've got the backing of the MU through that. It doesn't stop people trying to sort of pull the wool over your eyes. We've had some very strange gigs in our times, including somebody threatened to take us to court because we played the Beatles on our disco playlist, and various various things that I think showcase the dark side of what should be a really happy day actually. And on the most occasions, it is a brilliant day, really happy night, but you do get some occasional absolute howlers.
Yeah, and they're the ones you remember as well. It's like you don't remember the 99% of amazing gigs. It's always the slightly crazy story.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So this slightly brings us full turn back to unions and things with obviously MU contracts for freelance work. I'm very aware that both the ISM and MU have been doing an insane amount of work to try and represent musicians, and like everyone in all sectors are taking time to make sure or reacting to things as they develop. So things may not necessarily be perfect just yet, potentially putting you in a dangerous situation. But what do you think needs to be done going forwards to continue to protect musicians, both freelance and employed, that isn't quite in place yet?
It's really difficult. I think the government, it's an absolute can of worms. The government have provided this self-employed money. Now, at the time of recording, we have no idea what we're getting. Some people have done sums on backs of fag packets to try and work out what they'll probably be entitled to. The problem is none of us know yet what we're going to get, if we're going to get it. Now, for a lot of people who are completely self-employed, it's pretty cut and dry. You will get some money. As long as you've done your accounts and you submitted honest tax returns. I think this is another thing that we could talk about is how honest people are with tax returns. I think one of the problems with the situation of self-employed people is that the government's opinion, and like a lot of other people in the employed population, is that people who are self-employed are dodgy, and that isn't right. I would say probably about 95% of the time that isn't right at all. And the majority of us, are very, very honest with and open with our tax returns. I mean, at the end of the day, if you're not going to get a mortgage, you're not going to get a loan, these things, you're not going to get it. It's all very well saying I've earned no money that year, but at the end of the day, if you go to a bank and you say, look, here's my tax return, or I've made no profit, why would they give you any kind of credit?
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people are kidding themselves, and the ones who have, this is going to really come back to bite them hard, because we look at this and we can see quite clearly that the amount of money that the government are prepared to give could potentially help you out massively if your paperwork's all been in order up to now. I think that the ones who are going to be hit the hardest are probably those who've only just set up. So people, recent graduates from conservatoires and colleges and unis, who've obviously only just set up last year, September, whenever they started their self-employed music profession. I think that's going to be really difficult for them, and I wish them the best for that. Both you and I are sort of had a few years into the game now to be able to kind of build up some kind of history. So it makes that more. It certainly gives us a little bit more security. I'm in a unique situation personally, because obviously I earn, I think it's about 60% self-employed income and 40% employed. Now I've been thinking back. I've been trying not to worry about it too much, but I've been thinking back over the years as to how my profits have been, because obviously, like everyone in this game, none of us earn the same amount every year. It's just the way it is. So from my point of view, I think that there definitely needs to be a bit more support for those people who are employed and self-employed as well. So they're doing bits and bobs. So, for example, you might be on a contract for a certain amount of time with a chamber orchestra, but then you're also teaching self-employed. That might be a thing, I don't know. Or you might have, working for a music service, and then you might be working in a private school, and then you might be in a string quartet as well. So there's kind of, although you might have some salaried work, you've also got lots of self-employed income. I think that there needs to be a lot of support for people who they're not necessarily going to lose all their income, but they're going to lose enough income that it's going to make day-to-day living a lot more difficult. And that hasn't been addressed by the government.
No.
So I know that the unions are aware of these situations. I mean, basically, if you don't tell them, they won't know. And I think this is one of the things that we need to get across to everyone is, look, if you've got a problem and you are genuinely concerned about something in your life and it's been affected by the coronavirus outbreak, professionally, I think, getting in touch with the union, or getting in touch with Help for Musicians, or getting in touch with the MU or the ISM, those are the ways that you can be helped, because if they're not aware of your situation, they can't go without it. I'm not sure, I can't comment on the ISM, but there was a hardship fund from the MU that reached, there were grants given, and also Help for Musicians, there was grants from there as well.
Yeah.
So there has been, I think personally, there has been a good response, but I think more can be done to help people in different situations, other than, I'm either completely employed, I'm completely self-employed. In the middle, there needs to be a little bit more of a look at what's going on in the middle in the middle there, because I think it's just complete. I mean, it's complete warren, isn't it? We don't know. Obviously, it's happened so suddenly that no one's really sure. No one. People who are working, who's completely suddenly stopped working, can't really work out where their different sources of income come from, because on a week-to-week basis it's different. So I'd like to see more support for those people who aren't necessarily just employed, who aren't necessarily just self-employed, who are doing little bits of both. They need a bit more help, because, as I said before, if you lose, if you, let's say, for argument's sake, your salary is 30 grand a year overall, and you lose 16 grand of wedding gigs, but you're still employed and you're still earning 14 grand of that isn't necessarily going to cover your living, especially if you live somewhere like London or one of the more sort of affluent cities.
No.
I mean, we both live in the North of England, and it's we both live in usually nice areas, but at the same time, I think had I lived in, London, the outskirts of London, certain areas of Manchester, certain more salubrious areas of Leeds, I think I would have really struggled. I think it would have been difficult.
Massively. And I think it's really great you brought up recent graduates, because when I've been talking to people before, I've been very aware that if you're under the 1 year of being self-employed, it's a huge issue, but hadn't really put two and two together that if you've just graduated, that's you. And looking back, I think having just graduated, that's probably the time when you're at your poorest. So as a student, you get all the tax breaks, council tax, for example, and support and student loans and things. But all of a sudden, your first year of being a student, a graduate afterwards, you're probably not going to be making as much self-employed anyway. Your reserves will be low. Council tax hits. It's going to be a really, really difficult situation for those people.
It is, isn't it? I think this is where, thinking back as a graduate, not that many years ago, but a few years ago, it was very different. I mean, I kind of sort of fell into what I do now by accident, really. I finished uni, went straight onto a tour with the Royal Shakespeare Company, and came back, moved to York, and got a job at Banks Music, famed Banks Music, working in the packing department first of all, and then heading up the rock and roll department. I was there for about a year before I answered an advert for a music service job. It was initially half a day, and I think it went up to sort of 3 or 4 days, and then it's things just happen from there, don't they? Kind of organically, you pick up bits and bobs here and there, and before you know it, you're into the next year and the next year, and it kind of life continues. But that first year, if you've not got anything concrete and you're doing half a day's teaching in a school and you're maybe doing a gig every couple of weeks, it's really tough. And if that suddenly goes from you overnight, it's devastating, absolutely devastating. And if you've not had any kind of time to get any experience in any other areas of the industry, or else you've got no savings or you've got no other income, it must be awful. It must be really, really scary. So,
Yeah.
heart goes out to anyone out there who's in that situation. I mean, controversially, it might have changed, but music colleges sure weren't the places to set you up for a career.
No.
I
No.
hope that's ended.
I think we both have very similar thoughts on that. I know that things have changed since I was there going forwards, but yeah, it wasn't necessarily setting you forward to be as savvy as you potentially could be.
Yeah, and I think that's the word. Savvy is the word that you chose, and it was a brilliant word. It's really important that people are as proactive as they can be as well. I think you've got to go out there and look for the knowledge as well. It's great there's people like yourself who are out there now, sort of engaging the students, engaging the unis, and saying, look, there has got to be some kind of continuation. This cannot be the end. End of fourth year cannot be the end of the road. Yes, okay, I'm not paying you any more money. But it's that, how do we progress from a very insular environment with a relative security of being in a university and getting a student loan or having money from mum and dad, whatever, however it works, to then suddenly being out in the real world and earning some kind of living as a musician, whether that's completely all the income you're getting or whether that's on top of something else, a different part-time job you're doing as well. I'm glad to hear that it's from yourself that it is starting to come, sort of, that's more coming into fruition now. But I think, certainly going back 10 years, there was nothing. There was absolutely nothing. The professional development was a guy from a music critic from a newspaper coming in and talking about gigs, he'd reviewed. And that's not necessarily going to help you get the job, is it?
Not at all. Potentially leading on to a fun conversation topic on the other side of the spectrum. It's not just musicians who are struggling at the moment. Orchestras, organisations, critics. I saw Bark Track have been furloughed this week as well as a review site. But also one that might be of interest to talk about going forwards about being career savvy is agents. So Hazard Chase went filed for liquidation. I think it was the first week of all these restrictions. So there's quite a few issues obviously with agents and their things. Do you think going forwards that musicians will be more likely to represent themselves in the classical music world?
It's tough. It's tough. It's
with your crystal ball
I
here.
think I think it's a tough one. I mean, I think if you can represent yourself, I think you really, really should. I mean, these days, self-promotion seems an incredibly easy thing to access, even compared to sort of 10 years ago. Things like Instagram, even just very simple free tools, setting up an Instagram page, watching a YouTube video, how to do it and how to, make yourself more high profile, how to boost your, popularity. I think that hopefully a lot more people will go into their own, push themselves. I understand it's scary because obviously you're having to deal with contracts, you're having to deal with lawyers, you're having to deal with promoters, you're dealing with concert venues, tour people. It is difficult, but I think that if people are prepared to sort of jump in feet first and learn from others as well, then I think hopefully going forwards, because at the end of the day, the blunt truth of it is you'll make more money because you won't have somebody chopping off, a percentage to, that isn't going in your pocket. So okay, it's probably very easy to have an agent who's, if you kind of trust for everyone, great. But at the end of the day, if you realise and work out what they're taking from you, it's probably quite a high percentage. I mean, I can't talk from a necessarily a classical point of view, but certainly in the function band market and presumably in string quartets as well, the agents there, booking agencies are often taking 30-35%. That sounds like an insane amount of money, and people are thinking, but it's completely true. At the end of the day, especially in the wedding game and the corporate game, big money is quoted to companies and to organisations and clients in the wedding area, and most people will pay it. And I know that goes, as I say, I'm 100% sure that goes for, if you have an orchestra playing a corporate gig for, Ford or playing for, a big commercial on a TV commercial or that kind of thing. There is massive amounts of money, but somebody is skimming some money off somewhere at the top. So if you're prepared to put in that little bit of extra legwork and say, look, I'm going to give it a go as an individual myself, I think it's a really, really useful thing to do. What are your thoughts on it?
Totally agree. Quite interesting. I met a pianist called Julia Zilberquit at the Malta International Music Festival, which is like the most random week ever. I wouldn't normally go to a random country for a...
what a great country.
Exactly. Stunning place. It was great. But one of those unusual random weeks in life. And she was talking, basically, she's based in America and she's represented herself for the last 30 years, I think it was, or something. And in Europe has someone who helps her, and that's about it. And she loves the freedom and the creativity of making those connections herself. And thinking historically, say, like we were saying with our time prior to MSN Messenger, if you say we're starting out in the career, you would never be able to go and play at so-and-so hall in America or the UK because you wouldn't know the people. And to go and find out those contacts and addresses, you'd have to spend 4 days going down to the local library, getting out reference books and addresses and all these different things. So in essence, agents back then were very useful because they had all the information in one place. Now, in essence, if you want to, you can get your own customer relationship manager tool online for free and use HubSpot, go for it yourself, and you can have all this creative freedom and these contacts and do it. I think it's going to be very interesting going afterwards and seeing if there is room for agents. I'd be probably on the more controversial side and say, particularly in classical music, it would be potentially beneficial if there weren't. Partly because of it being more on musicians to have their own creative freedom, but also with some big artists, you see like their social media representation and it's just a bit meh, for want of a better word. And again, if people are forced to innovating and being online and creative and having multi-revenue streams and things, we might be in a stronger position. I think good agents are always fantastic, but I think it'd be an argument for it being different in the future potentially.
I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, I think booking agents, as you say, they've been around for a long, long time in many areas of the creative arts. Whether that's actors, musical theatre artists, musicians. It's a really difficult one because obviously a lot of the artists who are on a global scale, big, your Lang Langs. I mean, a lot of these people probably aren't that bothered about the amount of money that the agents take. To put it bluntly, I mean, it's probably, a drop in the ocean. I think on a slightly smaller level, slightly smaller scale, sort of tier down maybe, still international, still, touring and playing to big concert halls. I think at that point, if you've got the time in your week to be able to dedicate to a bit of self-promotion, a day, half a day, whatever, to admin, I think that's the important thing, is being able to just be organised. And I think if you can be organised, it's easy. I mean, it's at the end of the day, a lot of these guys, and they're travelling to and from venues, there's a lot of flights, there's a lot of trains, a lot of hotels. They have got time to do these bits, when you're flitting idly through your phone on Facebook or Instagram or whatever it might be, you could be doing something more constructive. I think we're all guilty of that ourselves.
Yeah.
But I think, certainly, as you say, it's going to be a very different landscape when you come out the other side. So, interesting to see how that pans out.
Very much so. Well, as someone I know who spends a lot of time travelling and going to live events, both music and also high-end, low-league football, how have you been managing to sort of stay sane with being trapped in the house? Obviously, you've got a young son as well, so that must be taking on now I guess it's Easter holidays, so your homeschool parenting must be on holiday now.
It's been difficult. I mean, I've been teaching during the week, most sort of about 3 days out of the 5 of the weekdays. Netflix, Disney Plus couldn't have come across. Disney Plus 100%. A better time. Video games.
With Disney, it's the sort of thing where you want to say The Mandalorian, but realistically, you've been going over like Hercules and like old school Disney cartoons.
Mate, as far as I know, I haven't yet gone into Mandalorian, but as far as I know, they're doing it on an episode by episode basis. I don't think they've launched the whole thing out. So,
Yeah, they did it the same in America, and because I was quite keen, I managed to watch it on various places on the internet when it first came out. But yeah, it's doing like similar to Game of Thrones, it being a weekly episodic thing, so you can't necessarily binge watch just yet. So
yeah, it's tough. I mean, I think it's one of those things where you can't necessarily, you have all these ideas in your head about, this kind of, I'm going to have all this time to find myself, and I'm going to have all this time to, get fit. I'm going to have all this time to, meditate. At the end of the day, you wake up in the morning and, we've got a 6-year-old son who thankfully is absolutely good as gold most of the time. And, we have been doing some work with my wife's in the SLT at a big secondary school. So she's had to do a little bit of work in school as a key worker, but very little. But she's worked a lot from home as well. So between us, we have been setting him some tasks to do. We've used kind of various bits and bobs off the internet and bought stuff on Amazon. But yeah, I mean, for me, it's been reading, still practicing, playing still, it's a really important part of keeping sane. Video games, Netflix and Disney Plus. A lot of those have been with a 6-year-old, trying to keep him as sane as possible as well. Along with going out for the prescribed exercise, which is really important as well. I saw my first policeman in the wild today.
Really?
Yeah. So on patrol. On my way to shopping, so I wasn't out there.
No, it's your one trip.
Loitering. Yeah, my one trip to the supermarket, and but I mean, I think it's difficult. It's been really difficult to kind of make that adapt to having to spend most of your time at home, especially when, like you say, like yourself, I travel around a lot. When I'm not traveling for work, I tend to go and watch football as well. Mighty York City, shout out to Midsmen.
Just crowbarring it in. In fact, I brought it up, so it's my own fault.
Mate, I mean, for anyone who's a sports fan, whatever sport you're a fan of, or anyone. I mean, live music. We both love comedy as well. All of it's kind of these live events obviously have either gone online in some shape or form, or in the case of sport, been cancelled.
Yeah.
So. It's tough. It's tough, really. But you just. I think a lot of the time it's communicating with people. I think everyone's getting through it together. Exchanging ideas and coming up with crazy videos, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's. I was listening to Radio 4 because I'm obviously a young person and I listen to Radio 4 before coming on here. And there was Zoe Lyons doing a sort of a small comedy sketch and saying that when she was obviously like now in lockdown, I've been all this time, I've been wanting to write books, write a sitcom, start some art, do sculptures, and I've just never had the time. And now all of a sudden I've got the time and it turns out I'm just untalented and lazy. So it made me smile as sort of like it's actually harder to do all these things in reality anyway. And also I'm intrigued to know your thoughts as well, because obviously classical music's now gone crazy for live streaming and concerts, and everyone's putting out content which I think is amazing. And we now are going to have to compete with Disney Plus and Netflix and where people's attention is. Do you think it's going to be a point where there might be a drop off as to where people's attention is and things?
In terms of the classical music side of it?
Yeah, if they'll start switching over.
I think the novelty might wear off at some point, and that sounds a really brutal thing to say. I think it's a really good way of people coping with the situation they find themselves in. Creativity is an incredible avenue of being able to express yourself. And at this time, a lot of people, all they want to do is just express themselves. And putting out a video, writing a piece of prose or painting is a way to do it. That's absolutely brilliant. Myself, I've not really found myself having time, it sounds ridiculous, to watch much more in terms of things like Netflix than I would have done before, because I'm obviously during the day teaching or homeschooling, or doing things with the family, and actually that time that you kind of think, I'm going to have to watch, all of 24 or all of Dexter, he's just not there. But I think at some point, I think normality will set in. If this goes on for a long time, what are we now, at the end of week 3?
Yeah.
I think at some point, then a kind of a routine from everyone will will then start to set in. And I'm not sure what that kind of picture will take. I mean, I think things like Netflix, like Disney Plus, like the iPlayer, they've really stepped up their content with Beeb House, which is brilliant. I think it's really good because I think it can help people escape. There is escapism in that, and I think that's so important. As I said before, creative is an escapism as well. And obviously, it can be a really important revenue stream as well. Keeping your shop window open, saying to people, "We're still here. We're still making music. We're still creating." And that's one thing I've been really, really pleased about is those who've really, really grasped this by the horns are those who've gone out and they've carried on putting content out and they've carried on adapting to the situation we're in. They haven't just shut down their online presence. Things like the Kaleidoscope Orchestra, and that was amazing. Those videos they've been putting out, absolutely amazing. And the amount of time that's gone into that is just stupendous. And I think that will have a really, really big impact for them the other side as well. I think people are going to remember those videos, they're going to watch them and there's some bookings, and hopefully it will lead on to things for its time.
Massively.
So yeah, at the end of the day, it's maybe at some point the steam will run out for people creating. I don't know. I hope people get what they want out of it online, and those of us watching get to enjoy it as much as we can. But I think there is definitely a place for sitting down and watching an episode of I don't know, Brooklyn Nine-Nine or whatever. Maybe Tiffany's on Netflix.
100%. Well, sort of ending on a nice sort of constructive note. What sort of advice would you give to musicians going forward, particularly as you mentioned earlier for teaching online and retaining the same level of payment for your services, as well as potentially sort of just general advice going forwards and staying sane?
I think you've got to look out for number one. I think it's really important to make sure all your friends and family are good. Everyone's alive, everyone's mentally sound, everyone's, still kind of, feeling relatively sane. I think when it comes to a professional thing, looking out for number one is really important, and saying, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to smash as much teaching as possible. If I can, if I want to, that's the important thing. It's if your home situation means that you cannot do that teaching, then that's really, really tough. But you shouldn't feel forced into doing it. I shouldn't be sat here going, you must carry on teaching. I'm very lucky that I have a situation where I have a separate room music room where I can teach from. I've set up, it wasn't a music room, I've got a studio, I've set up my drums in there, I've set up a couple of cameras, and I'm able to carry on. I know that's not necessarily the case for everyone, and I completely understand that. I think you've got to adapt, and if you can't necessarily offer music, traditional instrumental lessons online, say, hey, what about doing some theory? At this point, I also want to bring up something as well that I've just become aware of, and this is by no way a means of a plug, because I've never used these guys before. But there's an exam board called MTB who have been around for quite a long time. But seemingly, this is a time for them to shine. And basically, obviously, this summer, all the ABRSM and Trinity exams, Block School, LCM have all been cancelled. MTB is an exam board that is also Ofqual affiliated, so grade 6 to 8 still carry UCAS points. But I've seen some things online, I haven't looked into it, but it seems that they're going to be offering remote exams. The idea being that the kids can record themselves playing exam pieces and the scales and the other bumps that you do to the exam, and submit that to the exam board, and they can actually do an exam. But the great thing seems to be that you can take the exam at any point. So you can record it and send it at any point. It's an audio recording, not a video, I should say as well. So that's one thing that I think, for those of you out there who are kind of thinking, because there are going to be people there who are teachers in the classical music sector who are thinking, oh my goodness, I had 12 violin students who were going to do exams. If I don't get an exam out of them, they are going to, sadly, because I'm going to put it out there, I am not an exam machine. I really don't like doing that. I'm pushing kids from year to year through exams all the time, but there are situations where exams are the appropriate measure, and a lot of the time they can be a very, very positive experience. But we've lost that this summer. So if you've been gearing kids up all year for an exam, whatever that exam is, like 6th grade 1, prep test, whatever, suddenly that goes out the window. There is an opportunity out there. And I would say to people, explore those opportunities. Even if it's, I'm going to do a mock exam with you on Zoom and I'm going to send you some Haribo in the post, give the kids that experience. And let's wrap it up. Let's see, sign the year off on a positive. And so they've achieved something at the end of the year rather than this kind of, because I do feel very much, and I felt this myself, sort of middle of March, or the 16th, 17th of March, when all this kind of was potentially going to happen. I felt scared, I felt worried like everyone else. I'm looking at my income, I'm thinking, I've got this to budget for, I've got tax return in July and all this, yada, yada. And suddenly it's all gone, or some of it's gone. But being able to look at it positively and saying, I've managed to keep the majority of my teaching going on the internet. I'm looking at my kids who would have been taking exams, and I'm hoping there's going to be an opportunity for them to do that and still have an exam and still have an exam certificate and be proud that they achieved a grade 2 in trumpet, for example. But you've got to be proactive and go out and look for those opportunities because they are out there. As I say, this exam board, are out there. You make it what you will, no idea, but they're out there. They're open for business. They're open to. The important thing that I've noticed as well is that they've also basically, they haven't said explicitly, but all of their choices for pieces are now free. So they're basically accepting the pieces from all the exam boards. So all that work you've already done with your kids could be transferred over. So, if you're in that situation, you're panicking, you're thinking, I'm going to have parents on me, and, these things happen. We as teachers, sometimes we are kind of primed towards that summer exam period sometimes. I know there's a lot of people have a lot more students than I do who probably are thinking, this is really going to be a difficult time. So, look for all the, look out there for all the options. Go out, look for help. Go on Facebook groups. This is the time. Facebook can be an absolute warren and just it can be a swamp, can't it? An absolute, it can be the worst thing in the world.
Yeah.
But I think that in this time, like your own group and various other groups, the sort of COVID-19 musicians groups have really, really helped a lot of people, especially UK-based ones. Or if you're in the US, US-based ones are great as well. But I think the ones that are specifically aimed at the country you're in are really, really good because obviously working conditions and you can kind of communicate with people in the same time zone, so that can be really helpful. So go out there and find your just find the resources for yourself, and don't be afraid to contact the union. Don't be afraid to contact mental health charities or anyone you trust as well, because I think that's important. Like yourself, Dave, you work in a very isolated position. You are your own man. You're your own boss, and often a lot of the time we find ourselves working on our own. A lot of the time from home, or offices, or travelling. And it's very similar to being isolated. So I think we've just got to talk to people and talk to other musicians as well, and go out there and look for those opportunities. If, as I say, if you are struggling in certain areas of teaching, ask other people. Drop your colleagues an email, drop your friends an email, drop your line manager if it's a music service or heads of music in schools an email from the teaching point of view. And if you're a musician and you've lost loads of work, all I can do is just say, I hope you get what you need in June. It's probably no small, it's a small consolation for the work you will have done. And I hope that you're able to access the money that you need in June if you are completely self-employed. And look out there for grants. Don't be afraid to ask them because they are there. Help musicians are there. The NU, ISM, there are organisations that can help you out if you need help as well. But it takes us back to the very beginning of this kind of adapting and going online. And if you want to give teaching a go, do it. Try it. You can't. The worst thing that's going to happen is you think it's not for me. I think a lot of time, a lot of people find it really is. I've been amazed myself on Instagram, especially, to see very, very, very prominent studio musicians, especially, who haven't necessarily taught regularly before, who've taken up the mantle of teaching, and they're realising how difficult it is, but they're making a good go of it, and they've been really successful because they've been prepared to engage in that as well as playing full time. Obviously, their playing's gone now, so apart from the odd remote session here and there, they're teaching online and they're enjoying it on the whole. So I just think just go out there and find your niche if you can, and ask for help if you need it.
Definitely. I think just sort of to follow on, add to your point slightly, that I think there's no better time to experiment, whether it's teaching or creating online content or digital things.
Yeah.
Normally, I think your audience would be a little bit more critical, or would potentially critical. But nowadays, in this current situation, everyone is so much rooting for everyone else, and you're not going to find a more sympathetic audience or customer base than now, who are going to be more forgiving of little things that may not go perfectly on this side of things. So yeah, I think that's a perfect message that you've got for experimenting and trying.
I think you've just got to do it. And I mean, at the end of the day, as you say, you've got a captive audience.
Exactly.
Literally. I think this is where we find ourselves in unprecedented times, and experimenting is what everyone will be doing. And at the end of the day, you've just got to go out there and give it your best shot. And if it works, it works. I mean, some of the things I've noticed, some of the things online that there's been new National Theatre things that have been online, ENO things. There's been, I think it was the Berlin Phil Concert Hall, digital concert hall, that was free for a while. There's been some amazing things in the classical music world that people have, these organisations that maybe, probably wrongly, we would have maybe said there's no way that they would adapt to this situation. A lot of them have. Now, I think a lot of that's down to people like you, David, who've gone to them and gone, look, you need to sort yourselves out with your content and your online presence, etc., etc. But they have, a lot of these organisations have done it, and obviously because there is a captive audience there, they've done that. Andrew Lloyd Webber in his musicals, whatever you think of him, he's been showing. I think most Friday nights. There was one last week. It was Joseph, but they've been doing a free broadcast on YouTube of an Andrew Lloyd Webber musical. That might be that's a punishment for some, but it obviously offers comfort to a lot of people. So they've been doing that on YouTube as well. There's been a lot of theatre streams, musical streams, a lot of opera streams as well. I've seen people posting up grids of live opera feeds and things that have been, well, not live, but performances, historical performances that have been put out there. And people are using YouTube as well. One of the things I've noticed a lot is that we can learn from sport. And I think this is one of the things where we come back to kind of, I talked a bit briefly about sport and how much I love sport. I think we can learn a lot from sport that, they've put up the big broadcasters who obviously are losing millions and millions and millions out of this. Okay, they can afford it, but they are losing a lot of money. They're showing historical games of football, or they're showing historical Formula One races, or they're showing historical tennis matches. They're keeping that content coming out, which is to be applauded, I think. They could just put up a blue screen and say, sorry, due to COVID-19, we're not doing anything, or go and check out our website. But no, they're showing things and they're keeping that content showing out. And okay, that is Sky, that is Virgin, that is ITV, but we can do it all ourselves on a small level as well. So just keeping the content coming is really good. And as I say, these organisations that have been doing that should be applauded, I think, for it. Have there been any that you've noticed in particular?
As you mentioned, some of the opera companies have been really good. In particular, Royal Opera House, they're quite set up for live streaming anyway, so they've been putting out a lot of free content. Yeah. Berlin Philharmonica, saw that the Royal Albert Hall have launched an education project. RSNO in particular have been smashing it. With either live streaming performances or they've been doing a series of at-home music challenges where they're made to sort of get empty glasses and try and make tunes, and one of their musicians just sort of coaches them how they've done it and what tune they've made, and then obviously the public then have to submit their own. Theirs have been amazing. I'm really impressed with what they've been doing. London Philharmonic also, they've been well set up for a while with this sort of thing, so they're continuing in their same vein. So I think some really good stories that are going forwards. And as you say, experimenting is great. There's so much free stuff you can do now. For example, this podcast is all going through a free open source software, so you can do broadcasting stuff on the cheap if you need. Well, as expected, we've been chatting for a lot of time, which is fantastic. So we're probably out of time for now. So thank you so much for being on the podcast, Dave. If someone
No
wants
problem.
to find you in the world of the internet, where can they find you?
So I go on Twitter as Dave_Hughes. I was an early adopter of Twitter, so I get them the nice names. And on Instagram at Dave Plays Drums. Content not particularly necessarily related to professional music, but you can find all sorts of things on there.
Mainly York City.
I look forward to I look forward to seeing all the content that people carry on putting out over the next few weeks. And yeah, I just hope everyone stays at home. Obviously you've got a garden, stay in your garden or go for your exercise, but stay at home over the next few weeks. We can all get out and get back to making music again. And big shout out to everyone who's really lost a lot of income. Thoughts with you all, because it's a tough time. And I think that the music industry will be stronger as a whole. The classical music industry certainly will be stronger as a whole. Everyone will find ways to adapt, and I think that the creativity is just going to be a real explosion when we come out of this other side. So yeah, thoughts to you all.
Very much so. Well, thank you so much. Coming on Monday, I'm chatting to Alistair Hogarth, who is a really fascinating person. He's a pianist and accompanist, but also has lots of creative projects and lots of stuff online. So he's going to be great to talk to. That's at some point on Monday morning, so that'll be one with coffee, desperately. But yeah, I hope you all have a nice, happy Easter weekend. Potentially, why not? It's in this world. Who knows?
Well, yeah, it's Easter Monday. It's a bank holiday, isn't it?
Exactly. People won't be at work anyway. But yeah. So thank you much for listening. As with all the last podcasts, I have no idea how to end this, so it's just going to kind of fizzle out, really. But thank you for listening, and I hope to see or hear from you again next time. Thank you.